Okay, welcome. Swalwell is out. And everything's a scam with the Democrats. We're going to get into it. Swalwell is finding out what it's like to be on the wrong side of the party powerhouse. All right, welcome to The Ordinary American. This is, the 13th of April. We got a lot to go over today. We're going to attack the Swalwell thing from a different angle. We're not going to get into all the salacious stuff. That's good and other people are doing it. We're going to attack it from the angle that everything is a scam with the Democrats. Compromise DC and how the whole system of government has been corrupted. Okay? Now, this show is anti-leftist. We're doing everything to drive as many voters away from the Democrats and to the Republicans for the midterms. Not because the Republicans are necessarily the solution to all the problems, as the great Dan Bongino teaches us, but because the Democrats are the cause of the problems. Almost everything we do ties right into that. Okay? Right into that. We are huge supporters of Trump. You might have seen the video last night. If you didn't, we put one out kind of late, around 8:30, maybe 8:45, because I was just so overjoyed with how Trump has played the Iranians and played the situation. Go back and watch it. It is got 15 minutes, 13 minutes, something like that. Great information, quick hit. We go through all of the ways that he's playing the situation. And then look today. I got to go on Truth Social before I come on here because things change. About an hour ago, Trump announced that 34 ships went through the Straits of Hormuz yesterday. I don't know how many normally go, but 34 is better than zero. He also mocked it and saying it's the most since this foolish closure began. He's mocking the closure. He's getting everybody to ridicule it and to see and to diminish it because the Iranians are diminished. I go into a little bit about this last night, and we're probably going to see here that the Chinese are now on the American side trying to get the straits open. Now, what did he do since yesterday? He did a blockade of the Iranian ports, and he put our Navy ships in the straits to provide safe passage. You might remember from way back at the beginning of this when Lloyd's said we're out, thinking that they were going to cripple the world. Trump came in and said we'll provide insurance. Insurance, as you know, if you've watched the show, is part of the grift. All the financial services. So Trump is taking away all of that grift from the City of London crowd, the globalists, the neocons, everybody who loves conflict more than they love commerce. Okay, Trump is just winning. All right, it's going to be a lighter day on the Trump stuff, although he's woven into all of this because he's the president. Let's go back and start with Swalwell. All right, Swalwell's out of the governor's race. He's still in Congress. At least when I came on, he was still in Congress. Okay, that's interesting for a number of reasons. One of which is he can stay in Congress after these horrible allegations. Look, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. It's obvious, by the way, this is part of the scam. It is obvious that these were known facts, all this infidelity and salacious sexual relationship stuff were known facts to the Democrat Party long before this weekend. This is how the compromise works. It's the same thing with the Epstein stuff. You know, if they can catch you doing something you shouldn't be doing, or as my grandfather, the wise guy, said, if two people know it, it's not a secret. Swalwell is finding that out. Okay? He's been compromised. He was compromised a long time ago. Fang Fang, the Chinese spy. While Swalwell was on the Intelligence Committee, he was sleeping with a Chinese spy. And I don't know who it was in Congress. Somebody came back and said, oh, we don't think he gave away any secrets. Are you kidding me? Come on. Of course he did. He didn't give away any secrets, so he was left on the committee. Nothing happened to him. And the Democrats wait and they do this. Why? Let's go back to California. California, when they got just enough confidence that there were single party rule, they switched the California voting system from a Republican primary and a Democrat primary in a governor's race to what they call the jungle primary. The jungle primary means anybody that wants to run goes in. They have one primary. The top two vote getters go and do the runoff election in the general election. Why did they do that? They did that because it was a further power grab. We can make it so that the Republicans have to get more votes than everyone except potentially one candidate in a primary. Instead of having their own primary, where guaranteed their Republican would be in the finals, they're going to try to remove them altogether. Total scam. Not okay. They had single party rule so they could do it. We're not going to get into the history of that at this moment. It's another show. But roll the film forward to today. What happens? The Democrats find themselves in a position where in California, which is sort of like the headquarters of the leftist Democrats, where they do, as we're seeing, most of their scams, the biggest scams, funneling money, stealing taxpayer money, corrupting elections, everything. So they are worried because right now, 2 Republicans stand 1-2 in this jungle primary. If they come in 1-2 in the jungle primary, well, what happens? Well, then the Democrats can't corrupt the finals, the general election, because it's a Republican either way. They're working right now desperately to get a Democrat up to probably come in second in the primary. Hilton seems like, knock on wood, he's going to come in first. But so they can corrupt the election. They control all of the election offices. They've rigged all the rules. They've got all of the single party rule, the whole state. So if they can get somebody in the final, they can corrupt the election to win it. If they can't get somebody in the final, what happens? Either one who wins, but let's say it's Hilton, he is very likely to call in the Department of Justice, call in Doge, call in Treasury, call in Housing and Urban Development, call in everything to come in and start to investigate California. The Democrats can't have that. This is the mothership of leftist corruption. This is their problem. They've corrupted everything along the way. Now they had to shiv Swalwell and get him out because from their point of view, and they're probably right, if he is in that race with some others, it dilutes those votes. This gets back to the Bill Clinton, Ross Perot. This gets back to the Teddy Roosevelt, Bull Moose Party, Woodrow Wilson. Okay, the third party does often split the vote. So the Democrats are trying to remove as many people as they can. It seems to me that they removed the straight white guy over the round white woman, Porter. She doesn't seem to be any prize to me, but in their weird Game of Thrones, who's the most aggrieved, clearly the round white woman is more aggrieved than the straight white male. So it looks like they're marshaling everything behind her to try to get her up to second. Again, my philosophy and my belief is they have everything corrupted, so I think that they can do that. That would be too bad, but let's wait and see. So that's why Swalwell is getting booted. You notice he wasn't booted from Congress. He was just booted from the governor's race because they want his vote, because he's a loyal person. Why? Because he's corrupted. The Fang Fang thing proved he was corrupted. Oh yeah, special tie-in side note to health and wellness. If you do read the Swalwell stuff, one of the things that becomes clear is that a lot of the worst of the allegations are related to alcohol use. So if anybody wanted another reason other than medical, physical, biological, it's not good for you, reasons to stop drinking, you could look at this and say, nobody really ever made better decisions after a few drinks than they did before. I don't think so. Most of these bad decisions were made when one or both parties were drinking. Just a public service announcement to draw attention to bad decisions seem to increase when alcohol consumption goes up. All right, back on this thing. So he's getting booted, not from Congress. He didn't get any real problems from sleeping with a Chinese spy. I can't believe that, but he didn't. By the way, was it Dianne Feinstein? She had a Chinese spy who was her driver for, I think, like 20 years. And in both cases, we were told by the FBI, nope, we couldn't find that anything was taken. Why was the Chinese spy staying as her driver for 20 years if he wasn't getting any good information? This gets to the second big point I want to make. One is the California election system corruption, and everything's a scam with the Democrats and it's backfiring on them. Second one is everything in DC and in politics seems to be about compromise. Everything. Everybody knew. In fact, nobody is even pretending that these allegations on Swalwell are coming out because of Republicans. Everybody sort of accepts quietly or overtly that it was the Democrats who got rid of him. His own party. That's unusual. We didn't used to see that. Now it's just sort of out in the open. We, the party, have had this information for a long time, and we're going to get rid of him and use it now. Keep in mind, they're not saying this stuff is so terrible he can't sit in office. They're saying this stuff is super terrible, he can't run for governor. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? If it's bad enough for him not to serve as governor, it's bad enough for him not to serve as a congressman. Doesn't that make sense? Okay. So, everything's compromised. I'm going to tie this back into Trump. Of course, I can tie everything to Trump. One of the problems for the swamp, for all of the elected class on both sides of the equation, was that when Trump went down there, despite what the Democrats and the left have tried to tell everybody, is he wasn't compromised. How do I know this? Because if he was compromised, we would have heard about it. All of the things that they told us was compromised, all of the traitorous stuff through Obama, etc., and the Russia hoax, they all made it up. It's all fake. It was a setup. If somebody's really compromised, like Swalwell, you don't have to make it up. You just use the information. That's the threat. Hey, I know you've been, whatever, getting paid by the Ukrainian gas company, and we are going to tell people. That's compromise. With Trump, they have to make everything up. That's how you know he wasn't compromised. Now, part of why he wasn't compromised was because when he was running, he wasn't a politician, he was a businessman. He had spent most of his adult life in the public eye, on his TV show, and even before the TV show and during his TV show. You know, I think he could reasonably be accused of wanting to be in front of the camera a lot. He lived his life in his business, not all of it, but a lot of it, in front of the camera. People knew about him. He went on Howard Stern. He talked. He shared things. When he ran for office, I shared this a few weeks ago, he had the most name recognition of anyone who'd ever run for the president's office ever. So he didn't have to go around and collect IOUs to people in all the states, the dog catchers and the state reps and everything. He didn't have to do that. So when he went down there, not only did he not have a list of people he had to, take care of, but when he went down there, because he was never a politician, there was no compromise on him. So what did they do? They faked it all. This is all an example of Washington and why it's compromised, or how it's compromised and how it works. When we see people, Ro Khanna, he did 4,200 trades. We went over this last week. He made, $50 million or something in trades on, I think it was AI, based on a bill that was going to come out or wasn't going to come out. Some insider information, like Pelosi. Do you think when they make that much money that they are in the office because they're good public servants and they just want to go and get the potholes filled? Or do you think maybe it's because they can make $50 million? Just think about it. Now, once they start to do that, they get excited about that and they can do it more, okay? Well, in all these cases, other governments, their party, the other party, there's loads of people who have compromising information. You can remember, if you follow this stuff, we now know that the Russians had information about Hillary, that she was on heavy tranquilizers, was emotionally and mentally unstable, and they didn't choose to use that in the primary, rather in the general election when Trump was running against her in 2016. Why? Because they wanted it for later. Everything is compromise. Trump is an advocate for ordinary Americans because he's not compromised, despite what they're telling you. And again, go back, do the research yourself. The way you can tell he's not compromised is because they have to make stuff up. Everything's made up. He is either the single most brilliant criminal mind in the history of humankind, because he's been investigated by everything. All they could come up with was these fake things about the woman with the sex romp and a Bloomingdale's or something. I don't even know what it was. Okay? Nonsense. We're finding out that that was total nonsense, and she was probably paid by Soros or somebody else. They have to make this stuff up. If he were compromised, you wouldn't have to make it up. And now what's he doing? Here's another way you can tell he's not compromised. He's blowing up the entire city of London, globalists, neocon, extract wealth from everybody through conflict scheme. He's doing it right now in Iran. He puts America first. He's reindustrializing America. Okay, he's bringing manufacturing back, oil and gas production, as we went over last night. But Swalwell was compromised a lot, obviously. I kind of think he's going to eventually have to get moved out of Congress. But I don't know. I mean, the Democrats they don't really care too much about getting caught at these things. They just want to win. Power is the only moral imperative. There's no values associated with it. Okay? So the Swalwell stuff is just an example of how politics works. Compromise. I get worried when I see people stay in Washington too long. It makes me believe that they got caught and they're compromised. And then at that point, they're either being told they have to stay in office because whoever compromised them wants their votes, or they figure, well, I'm compromised. I may as well stay down here and enrich myself now. Something like that. Again, who am I? I'm an ordinary American. That's the premise of the show. We're trying to do like Hayek and Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell talk about. Not a planned economy. Take opinions and watch the market. The market gets the best pricing. Ordinary American. Take an ordinary American's point of view. Experts suck. Okay? They have destroyed this country, the experts. And we're going to get into some of this stuff on the health side in a second. Okay. It's always a scam with the Democrats. Swalwell is getting aced by his own party. No one's even claiming otherwise, but only in the governor's race. Why? Because it's a scam and they're trying to get, Porter, in to at least be in the finals so they can corrupt that election and say, oh, look, she won. Okay? It's always a scam. Corruption. Trump is not compromised, which is why he can work for ordinary Americans. I'm going to skip now over to something. I tried to, I'll get it eventually. I was trying to share a screen so you could read this piece with me, but I'm going to tell you about it because I haven't quite figured it out, and I'll get it maybe tomorrow or the next day. But there's a X account called Kobayashi, and they do a lot of economics, and they've got some good stuff, but they're obviously not fans of Trump. And one of the things that they talked about, and it was odd how they talked about it, was they said that the workforce is shrinking, so it takes fewer people coming into the workforce to keep the unemployment number down. I think I said that right. Let me say it again. How they framed it, which was awkward framing, is it takes fewer people. I think they said it took about 3,000 people or something to keep the unemployment rate down. Whereas before we were deporting illegals, you needed more people to come into the market. Otherwise, the unemployment rate went up. When the unemployment rate goes up, markets react. That's not good. It was an awkward phrasing to avoid saying what's really happening. What's really happening is we're finding out that our labor market, along with our housing market and all the other markets, have been totally distorted by the presence of the illegals. Distorted how? They've flooded the labor market, which increases the supply of lower cost labor. Great for big companies who want low cost labor, not great for ordinary Americans who are trying to get into the workforce and get some of those jobs. One of the great sort of known scams, not scams really, but sort of pieces of information if you ever live in Southern California, is that even the illegals understand once they're in, they want to shut the door. They don't want any more illegals coming in, which is one of the reasons, my theory, that Trump did so well in the border communities in Texas. Because even illegals know economics. If there's more low-cost labor coming into the market, I'm going to make less. Supply and demand. So this Kobayashi group, you can go onto my X account, The Ord American on X. It's in there. And you can read this language. I was going to have it on the screen. I'll get it eventually. All right. What it's really saying is Trump is doing such a good job removing the illegals. And by the way, I don't know what the real number is. We hear numbers 10 million, 30 million, 50 million, 20 million. We don't know how many. But we're told that there's been about, I think it's 3 million who have left or been removed. And with that amount of people who have been removed, it looks now like the labor market is starting to be much closer to undistorted. So we can really get a good picture of what it looks like. And what it looks like is it doesn't take that many new hires of real Americans to keep the unemployment rate low. That's good information to get because that's telling us that the economy is a little bit stronger in the labor market than maybe we'd been led to believe, partly because of the distortion. So I wanted to show this because the language was so torturous, and it's how we can all get sort of tricked into thinking, oh, things are terrible. When that market's distorted and the unemployment rate isn't going down or is going up, we can think, ooh, that's terrible. Unless we're told, wait a minute, it's all the illegals. Lowering the wages, taking away jobs from actual American citizens. Trump is getting rid of it. Because he doesn't have new illegals coming in, essentially the border's closed. I think there's probably some, but more or less, there are no illegals coming in anymore. So the market at least is not getting more distorted, and as I said, we're removing people. Okay, I hope that makes some sense, because I think that's important to show how people can manipulate this data. Okay. I wanted to move, it's more sort of economic news. The latest data they have is the 2022 to 2023 time frame. And the data around how much money left certain states and how much money went into other states. I guess that's the latest we have. We don't have 23 to 24, 24 to 25, or 25 to so far in 26. But over almost 10 billion left New York. Now 20 billion went into Florida. Texas got what? 5.5 billion, trying to read my notes. South Carolina and North Carolina got roughly 4 billion. Why is that important? That's economic growth. Those are productive people going into those states and bringing their income. Now, Florida doesn't charge an income tax at a state level. Texas doesn't charge an income tax at the state level. But presumably the people who are coming in with those earnings are productive and successful, which means they're going to be able to buy houses, which means they're going to live in communities and buy groceries and go do things and buy things and save things and their kids will go to schools, and it's economic activity. New York is losing it. That was 10 billion 3 years ago. Hochul came out, as we shared, and was essentially begging people who left to come back because they can't afford their program, she said, unless they come back. What is she saying? She isn't saying we're going to change the programs. She's saying we can't afford them unless you come back. Don't leave. But none of these Democrat states are changing their programs. Illinois is not changing. California is not changing. Massachusetts is certainly not changing. None of them are changing. And so they're just losing people and losing people and losing people and money. What goes along with that? All the economic activity. Now, by the way, in a city like New York City, there are some trade-offs that might be better in the short run. Housing. If enough illegals are removed and enough people leave voluntarily, there may turn out to be, once we find out if that housing, how distorted that housing market was, that housing market prices start to come down. That will be good for the people who stayed. There are other bad reasons to stay, but let's take the little bits of sunshine that we can take when we can find them. Come on. So this is what's happening. And these things were happening before, well, certainly in Trump 1, during the interim, and then now Trump 2. If DeSantis is able to get the no tax on real estate, I can't imagine that 20 billion number maybe doubling. And then you're talking about massive inflows to a place like Florida, because the difference between being in a New York, say, which is what this data was from, and going to Florida just increased massively. It's crazy to think about that kind of money leaving, and the states just sit there and say, no, we are not going to change. We are sticking to our guns. All the people are leaving. The money is leaving. We need you to come back, but we aren't going to change our policy. That's the Democrat Party. That's a leftist party. Leftists can't change, because if they show a crack in leftism, leftism will completely crumble. Why? Because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not productive. You can't price anything. We've been through that. We should do that again sometime, but the Austrians do great work on the pricing mechanism. It just doesn't work. So, but why aren't they changing? Probably because they believe that they can win the House and the Senate in 2026, and then win the White House back in 28. And then what they'll do is they'll try to do a law down in Congress, which by some mechanism, I don't know the mechanism, will make going from one state to another irrelevant. It'll be some kind of a balancing act or something. I don't know what it will be. It won't be a restriction. They'll still let you go because they know they can't get away with that. But they'll put in some kind of a tax or something. That's leftism. People weren't moving to Venezuela. People don't move to Cuba. People don't move to North Korea. People don't move to China. People move out of those places. How do you know that this doesn't work? Because nobody wants to go there. If they wanted to go there, they would. They want to come here. It boggles my mind. I mean, to think of all the corruption we're seeing in all these states and at the federal government, and to see how single party rule doesn't work because we see everybody leaving those leftist states, as these numbers show, and the billions going to the conservative states. And yet there are still some people who want to vote Democrat. Democrats are not more sympathetic or good to the people at the lower end of the economic scale. They are not. If that were true, homelessness wouldn't skyrocket in California over the last 5, 6, 7 years. If that were true, Portland wouldn't look the way it looks. Oregon. But by the way, I saw a crazy story where some guy up there collected rainwater and was prosecuted and lost, saying that he took away a resource for the community or something. I mean, that is crazy time up there. Maybe we'll do a piece on that another day. I mean, these leftist states, spending goes up, population goes down because people are leaving, and I don't know who still votes for this stuff, but they are. My message to all of you who are still voting for it, relieve yourself of this TDS stuff. The Democrats have tricked you into thinking that being anti-Trump is more important than being pro anything else. It's even more important than liking America. I gotta hate Trump more than I like America. I gotta root for Iran in this conflict over America because I don't like Trump. That is not a healthy place to be. That is not a healthy place to be. Iran was a murderous regime. We're not going to get into it again today, but you should not be rooting for Iran. You should not be just rooting against Trump. If you choose to, ask yourself a question. What if all the stuff they told me wasn't true about Trump? Well, or say this, what if half of it wasn't true? 3/4, 7/8. Look, it's all not true. But if it weren't, then what would happen to all that anger? I mentioned this the other day, or last night, and I'm going to bring it up now. I actually wanted to have the video. You should go look at it. It's in my thread. James Carville freaks out and talks about wanting to see Trump tortured. Talk about resentments eating you from the inside. And there was a great post on X of Gollum right next to Carville. It's the same person, even though Gollum's a fake character. I mean, we've used him before in Forgiveness Friday. That bro needs to learn forgiveness. I mean, I've said on here, I think it's all a show, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's really that messed up. I don't know. But nobody should be taking his lead. You do not have to like Trump to stop voting for Democrats. You just have to stop wanting all of that corruption and all of that fraud and all that awfulness that drives everybody out of those states to stop. Crazy. All right, one more story, and then we're gonna shut it down for today. I talk a lot about health because health is super important, and one of the ways that the corruption in government works is they corrupt the regulators and then the companies. And I've mentioned before, I'll do it briefly right now, which is that if a company figures out, well, I can work with the regulators or I can get legislation passed. And once I do that, I can get my company big benefits, big profits. For example, if I can get immunity from anybody suing me over vaccines hurting people, then I can just funnel those vaccines through as many people as possible and collect the money, and nobody can stop me. We mentioned it the other day. Merck is stopping Gardasil, the HPV vaccine, just stopping it altogether. Makes me wonder if they know something we don't about whether it hurts people. Before I came on here, I didn't write the name down. I should have. It's in my thread on X on the great Nicholas Hulscher, his website or his X page. There is I think it was a birth control pill, and it gave women, I think it was brain tumors. I got to look it up. 25%, I think, of the women who took it. That's a big number. When you control the regulatory process and you can hide things and studies and whatnot, and then you're doing this as the company, you've been corrupted, you're in the corruption flywheel. But, you convince yourself your stock options are doing great, your cash is doing great, you're making a lot of money, people in the company are doing great, everybody's glazing you because, to borrow the term from the young people, glazing you because the stock price is going up. And now you got people coming from the government to work for you, you got your people going back to work for the government, and it's all compromised and corrupted. It's starting to be unwound. Part of it is by Elon buying X. Thank goodness he did. And this medical stuff is important because people die. When you start to read the stuff on the COVID vaccine that comes out, it is scary and awful, and they knew. When you start to read on the other vaccines, they knew. I've said before, I think I did a whole episode, crunchy moms were right. They should be thanked. They stood up to the system, and they were right. And good for them, and their kids are better for it. We're going to find out more and more. I think the next thing that's happening is they're starting to find out that chemo has been a giant, well, I don't know. I don't want to say it yet because that'd be too disappointing. But ivermectin, mebendazole, fenbendazole seem to have a massively positive effect on cancer, better than chemotherapy, and certainly can be used in conjunction with chemotherapy also. And as I've mentioned before, the CIA knew about that relationship between the parasite pathways and the cancer pathways back in the 1950s, and they chose to keep it to themselves. You got to ask yourself, what was the quid pro quo? They told the pharmaceutical companies, hey, we could tell the world that we know that cancer can be cured in this method, or we don't have to, but you got to work with us. Compromise everything. Trump is not compromised. Okay. All right, that's going to be the show today. Great show, a lot going on. Keep our eye on Iran. 34 ships yesterday went through. That's big. I don't know how many go through in a day, probably hundreds, but it's a good start. Let's see what happens next. By the way, no problems. The Iranians didn't do anything. Nothing. So let's see. All right. Our effort here is to try to help the MAGA movement win the primaries. Win the midterms. So please like, subscribe, follow, leave some comments, chat, send to other people. All of that helps. We're going to be back here at 2 o'clock tomorrow. We'll have more great stuff. As I always like to say, I think I'm going to keep this one. I'm not sure.